Alrighty. Just gonna make sure that the YouTube live stream is up and running. And I think we'll just get started. I don't know if any of my co-speakers are gonna be speaking today. I think Alon was saying that he wanted to. I think he might have been coming in today, but he can always join in a little bit later. It's all good. Okay. So I'm guessing everything is good right now. Stream's looking all right so far. Okay, let's get started. So today I was thinking about talking about finding your place in the market, and this is more referencing like finding, like it's not so much your dream job, but where you want to fit in terms of being the provider in today's society. So it's like what kinds of jobs that you're looking at, as well as how do you know like the job is right for you, and that relationship with the market. So as per the podcast outline, I guess we'll start from the top. So what I wanted to talk about really quick was the market itself, because in order to like find what your dream job or what your best career path is that's right for you, you have to understand what kind of market that you're getting yourself into. And the market really defines what kind of opportunities are there for you. And so that's why I think talking about the market itself is very important. So what is the market is the first question I have. And it's like an ever-changing... Well, okay. So the market is based on what is desired at the time that has like some profit measurement along with an idea or service that like society wants, and that changes based on like the locality of the society that you're in. So for example, if I'm living in America, which I am, there's going to be certain services that are more marketable here than they are in other places of the world, and I think that's pretty consistent everywhere. There's not like one place that has every market opportunity that another place does as well, though I think there's similarities based on the development of the country. But for the most part, not every opportunity is going to be held to the same value as in another place. And so that actually brings up a pretty interesting question, because what do you do when you want to pursue a specific career or a specific job, but it's only located in like another society? I guess it's up to you to decide whether or not that's worth pursuing, and if you need to swap over to that other society in order to be at your happiest. Really, that's about like finding yourself, but in some ways, finding your place in the market is exactly finding yourself too. But the market is constantly changing. It depends on where you're at, what time you're living into. For example, no one would want a software engineer from like 200 years ago when electricity was... I think electricity was a thing back then. I don't even know. I think it was 150 years ago when electricity was established. Am I wrong on that? Someone's gonna be pissed off at me for not knowing that, but you get my point. It's like the time that you're living in, there's different marketable qualities that you need to find in people in order to make your mark in the marketing world. And I guess that really does it for what is the market. It's just this ever-changing, ever-evolving services that are demanded, come and go. Yeah, that's about it. What's your relationship with it currently? So I think finding yourself in where you place in the market is a tough ask to figure out for yourself. And you can't really dive into it until you're, at least in America, until you're 18. And so what that means is that your first 18 years, you're trying to invest in yourself to be the best, to give you the best possible chance at getting what you want in the future, or getting to where you want to get in the future. And so for the most part, like, you don't even have a marketable quality until you're around like 15, when you're legally allowed your first job, but you're treated like just a high school kid at that time. So like the relationship is that you really need to invest in you need to have promising potential in order to make it in. And I think that's pretty consistent everywhere, or like for each stage of life. I think that threshold gets a lot lower because I guess people trust in your potential, or in your promise, in your personal development when you're older, to where you're guaranteed like more jobs in the future, because there's like unlisted experience that you have when you're older. And I think responsibility comes along, or responsibility is expected of those people instead of people who are younger. And so I think younger people have a harder time developing that relationship with the market because nobody is willing to give them the chance. Or people are less inclined to give them a chance in the first place. So it's like it develops based on your reputation, and it develops based on your age. And you can at least do something about your reputation, and you do as much as you can. And there's different creative avenues for you to boost your reputation as much as possible. But despite all your efforts, there's a whole lot of luck factors that go into finding a job, or finding your place in the market too. Like every successful person in the world, just like, I don't know, you take a look at some of the top software companies like Amazon, or like top services of the world, and you have like Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. They all started somewhere, and it's truly a miracle that their service, well, it's not so much a miracle, it's like there were so many great things that worked in their favor to get them to the place where they are today. And that's the market speaking for itself. Like these services that are great and well known today have gotten there because the market demanded that sort of technology and service in the world. And so, I mean, how do you develop a relationship with that? It's like, it's pretty toxic. You have to you have to upkeep this service, or be creative, as creatively, well, I guess as creative as possible with coming up with solutions for the world in a way that you can predict that the market will find it desirable for several years, or several decades, or several centuries. It's amazing to me that some companies are able to stick around for so long, but that really speaks to the kinds of opportunities that they've capitalized on, and the market opportunities that they capitalize on. Okay. So the next bullet point is, does that relationship change with a person's age? And yes, and I guess I've already spoken on this, in the sense that, like, when you're young, you're not expected to have roles, or normal roles, unless if you have like a family in, or if you have like some off the side responsibility, or like if someone trusts you with some off the side responsibility that's not listed as like a actual occupation. So for example, you'd get like people who are like 13 years old, and they do like nanny work for 4 or 5 year olds, because some people are willing to trust that nanny to do the job that they need to do. So, but as you get older, like, you're going to develop, like, you're going to be expected to have more responsibilities. Expected, and there's some belief that you will meet those responsibilities. But yeah, I guess I've already touched base on what that point already is, so I suppose I'll move on from there. So in terms of how the market's been changing, because it's pretty clear that the roles that you, like any individual would have in the market, is constantly changing as well. Because like my role, I have more opportunities to do what I want now than say if I was born like 400 years ago, right? It's like my different kinds of occupation would have been like farming, which is probably the biggest one, or I don't know, like some coal miner, whatever. It's like the kinds of opportunities that you can fill yourself into is much vast is much greater today than it was like at different points in history. But I think along with that, technology has also been ruining the market in the sense that you can start doing automation. You can start doing, if you're smart enough, you can create like software to do a lot of tasks for you. So you can automate a bunch of tasks that would normally take someone else, like the resource of someone else. But now you're able to expand to do like simple tasks from just a computer. It's pretty awesome. But at the same time, you're also trading out these kinds of jobs that are needed, or that have provided people this opportunity to put themselves in the market somewhere. So with technology, you're getting rid of jobs, is what I'm really trying to say. But that's not to say that it's completely ruining the market yet, because there's also these opportunities. If you're extremely competent and creatively competent, you can create these solutions to short task some of these jobs that you need done. Which I would say is kind of hard because, like, I mean, humanity's getting smarter generally, right? Like, there's better ways, or like the amount that we've been able to learn in these past generations are probably greater than it's been over the span of all humanity. So I guess it would be fair to say humans are evolving to the point where they can be creatively as the market demands us to be. But it's not a good situation to look at, because not everyone is gifted with the same sorts of creative intelligence that other people have, like some of the smartest people in the world have. So it's hard. I mean, what do you do with those people who aren't as creatively intelligent? Like, one day we're going to have automation for almost everything, or for every task that we want done. And the only remaining tasks that are needed in the world will be developers and whoever is creatively intelligent enough to automate even the hardest of tasks, or even the most complex of tasks that even a human couldn't do better at. So who knows? It's hard to say that technology is like, you want to say technology is ruining it, but at the same time, I think we should be seeing quality of life improvements for all humans. I think the way you measure if technology is doing good or bad things is if you measure how the quality of life for humans is getting better or worse. I think that really is the measurement for whether technology is a good variable into the lives of humanity, of modern civilization. But anyways, that kind of concludes my segment of the market. I feel like I've missed maybe a couple things, but I don't mind moving on from there. So in terms of like finding your spot, the first bullet point I have is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think that's a pretty general question that most people get when they're young. You need to fantasize and humor yourself of what you can possibly be in the future, because you want to see your potential as something worthwhile. And so I think for myself, it was being an astronaut. Astronaut was being like the top one. I don't really remember ever wanting to be the president of the United States. I know a lot of people have said that, but I'm not a huge, that was not for me. But I think what you conjure up in that answer describes the dreams that you see for, well, maybe the dreams for humanity or the dreams for yourself. I don't really know if there's a difference there. But anyways, in terms of like being an astronaut, right? That was like my 6-year-old to like 12, 10-year-old self. So I was pretty young and I didn't really have any understanding of where I placed. Actually, I must admit I was very self-aware of how I placed in the social hierarchy at school. Maybe not so much at maybe not so much with how the rest of the world went, but especially considering after the fact and after going through like after I've been a part of different communities, I've realized that the kind of environment that I was in was probably at the more intelligent, mostly due to the kind of wealth that was in the community. Came from a really great spot, but it's not like I would have known anyhow how smart I was or how dumb I was based on just my school alone. But I at least knew back then that even though I was in school, there were other schools around that I still needed to measure myself against. And so I always humbled myself that I wasn't ready to make any sort of distinction of what was possible for myself and what wasn't. So I continued to humor the idea that I could have been an astronaut. But especially considering I love like space stuff, anything science really is pretty interesting to me. But yeah, that was kind of my answer back then. And then it's sort of, I don't even want to say it changed. It kind of did. Like somewhere along the road, I think it was probably at the beginning of high school, that answer started to change to be like a software developer. And part of it was like I love playing video games for the whole day. And so, if I can spend my time in front of a computer, I could probably do that for my job too. And then I kind of questioned that, like, once college came around, because, like, software development is hard, man. And there's some brilliant people out there who are really great at making solutions. But I was also exploring my social side, like, towards the end of high school and in the beginning of college. And then everything just kind of went downhill, because then that transitions into my depression phase. And so then I really, really was questioning whether or not software development was the right thing. And then I would say like a couple years after that, I started gaining some resolve back in that decision. But I don't think there's any harm with asking where you see yourself in the future and what kind of market opportunities that you see yourself filling in the gap for. So I don't think that's necessarily a problem, which is what my next point was indicating. The actual bullet point is there a problem with asking that too early? And I don't think so. I mean, I think what I was alluding to with this question was, is there some sorts of expectation that you're setting up for yourself if you're making these claims this early? But I don't think so. I think it's a pretty harmless fantasy. Yeah, a pretty harmless fantasy of where you want to see yourself, and what kinds of goals that you want for contributing to the world. I think it's a very important question, though, because I think a lot of people actually have like a decent answer for that. And it's hard to say what is even a decent answer to begin with, but you understand that there's some rooted passion to do something for the world, even if you have like some sort of self-fulfillment from doing it. So, being like an astronaut, like some people say, like you can be like a firefighter, which has some bravery aspect to it. I think astronaut also has some bravery aspect to it as well, depending on how you look at it. I mean, you could just see the stars and whatnot, and maybe when you're young, you don't actually have a sense of danger when it comes to like space. So, and maybe if you're the president of the United States, I think it's a responsibility thing. You want to, like, when you're asking this question, you want to see what kinds of responsibilities that you want to have in the future. That's probably the better way to put it. I think that's the actual realization here. So, I don't think there's a problem with that. There's some people who actually, know what? No. I think some people have said in the past that they want to be like a housewife, right? And for me, I'm just scratching my head at like, why would you not want to have a different sort of impact on the world than doing that? But, and then some people have also like praised the idea of maybe being a custodian. And for me, it's like, I don't know. With my potential, I would say I have better hopes for myself than doing something that to me seems simplistic. But yeah, the more that I think about, that's a question of what kinds of responsibilities that you want in the future for yourself. The more I actually like that, because that actually encompasses every sorts of answers that I've heard in the past. So, and I think that's good. I think people at that age want to have a sense of responsibility or fantasize about meeting their potential to be responsible. I'm actually really happy with how I concluded that. Maybe I'll rewatch this podcast so I could hear myself again. Uh, Maybe someone else could also build on top of that idea. When do you have a practical answer to the question? And so this is like alluding to the idea that, you answered this question when you were 6. You've answered this question when you were 12. And you've answered this question before you went to college because you want to figure out what kinds of majors that any college would offer you. And that kind of sets you up for what career path you're going for in general. So when do you actually have a practical answer to that? And it's hard to say because I feel like for me, I didn't have that answer until post depression. And it's so I honestly couldn't tell you when a specific good time that is. I mean, my sister's been around like physical therapists like all of her life because she's very talented at some sports. Like gymnastics, she was one of the elite. It's like she would always place in the top 3. She'd always be on the podium, one of the top 3 candidates at like these gymnastics meets. When it came to like state events, she'd be in like the top 8 consistently in some, or she'd be consistently in the top 8 for at least one of the 4 events. So but on top of that, she would get hurt a lot. So part of that is like she grew up around physical therapists. So I think she had a pretty good idea what kinds of tasks that they were looking at. And she found it very interesting because she was a patient for most of her life. And therefore she was able to hang around them and see the kinds of passion that they share for the work that they do. So I don't know. It really is a dependent upon each person kind of thing. For me, it was just I had a windy path in order to be resolved in the decision that I made for the kinds of career path that I want. So when do you have a practical answer? Well, I guess the measurement for knowing when your answer was practical was when you feel confident in it. I feel like I never was. Excuse me. I feel like I never was until like a couple years ago. So, but that's how I knew I was in it because it was something that I was like passionate about, and I was sure about that decision. Should you know this while you're in college? Or should you know like the answer to what you want to be when you're in college? Well, usually when you're in high school and you're applying for colleges, you have some idea of what you want to do. So normally when you're at the college itself, you're already like in the phase of developing towards that goal, whatever career that you're looking at. However, I know a bunch of people who haven't been able to like they thought they wanted to do something and then they switched majors and did something else. I don't think that's necessarily bad, but there's like an actual financial and time investment that comes along with that. So it's a very costly switch. But in the name of finding yourself and finding what you want to do, I guess a lot of people would say it's worth it, but that I guess it really depends on the person whether or not that would be worth it to them, or if that situation played out for them, if it would be worth it to them. Yeah, I'll move on from that. Should you know this by graduating high school? And I think that ties back. So, like, in terms of stages, and how that compares to, like, the last question. When you're in high school, you have some idea of what kind of colleges you're looking at, but you don't actually have, like, an idea. Okay, no, I take that back. You really only have, like, an idea of what college you're looking at by your senior year. Because by then, you actually, like, the decision is coming up on you. And so you need to have that filled out by like winter of your senior year. And it's hard to know. I think a lot of people are forced to make that decision for themselves prematurely. But it's hard to know whether or not it's premature or if it's the right decision in the moment. So it's hard to get that sort of measurement for yourself. And you're only 18. You're still a kid. Like Jesus. It's it's kind of I don't know. That's such a responsibility that it's a huge responsibility to take on. But as is life, and that's kind of like the cycle that life is at the moment. So, especially for the people in my area, or the people of that level of intelligence to be going to, or to be considering college in the first place. All right. Are all industries equally easy or hard to get into? I think this is kind of hard because, well, okay. I'll explain my situation first and then I can compare it to other people's situation with finding their place in the market. So, with my place in particular, being like a software developer, I didn't conventionally come through like a college-based education system. Or yeah, I didn't graduate college before I started looking for my first software job. What I ended up doing is I took a coding boot camp when I was 19, graduated from that, and then tried looking for a job afterwards. But no one was willing to take me seriously, and to be fair, I wasn't willing to take myself seriously either. So, rightfully so, the market said, you're not ready. And I was kind of resentful about that because nobody was willing to give me a chance or really to say the things that was meaningful to me. They all just said, "Oh, your current work doesn't really match the criteria of what we're looking for as marketable projects for this position." Which is like a tough slap to the face, but it was needed. 2 years later, I ended up going to a second coding boot camp where I needed like some better. Honestly, I just did it because I was discouraged that the first one didn't do it for me. So I figured that after like growing a little bit, and I think back then I was 22 when I started. Yeah, I was 22 when I took my second coding boot camp. So I was like kind of at the age of where everyone else was at, like all my peers who were graduating college that same year. I just ended up graduating my second coding boot camp. Um, and yeah, after that, like there was a whole lot. Well, okay, during that program, we had a lot of interview prep and whatnot. So I was very confident with how I could conduct myself in an interview because part of the graduating requirements was you needed to have a mock interview with one of the instructors who led like the 400 level classes per se. That's really what it is. But um, yeah, I felt like I was ready for the market at that time, but the market again told me that I wasn't ready for the positions yet. And so I was equally resentful about that and continue moving forward to now, which is I'm back in school for like actual college. I'm going to be finishing up my senior year this year. It's been a windy path with how my educational path has been. It's kind of nice knowing that I'm going to be like done with it all by the end of this year. And so I finally took up an internship this summer. It started 4 weeks ago actually, and the market's been telling me that I knew nothing about how the industry or how like the top of the industry has been actually working. So I work for T-Mobile currently, phenomenal company, and they have like some of the up-to-date practices when it comes to technology stacks. So I'm working on scalable products, trying to convert things over to a more modern um, stack. And yeah, it's great seeing all these technologies and how they all build to my sub product of the bigger product that T-Mobile is um, that T-Mobile is more well known for. But yeah, it took me a long time to actually get to the place where I am today. And a lot of that took a huge amount of personal growth. I needed to humble myself back down to a point where I couldn't be resentful towards recruiters. And when I did actually have that opportunity, I was able to meet the opportunity that was given out to me with the best that I had. And thankfully, my best was enough to get me a spot. Now, in terms of how I've seen other people go, I know some pretty brilliant like software developers, and they're very social too. Um, Gone to great schools. They ended up getting software engineering positions at like Microsoft and Facebook. Um, and this was like right after graduating college. And I couldn't even tell you, like, I believe they're extremely smart, but it was hard to know if it was just that intellectual gap that was really causing me this lag, because I don't know, when I graduated my stuff, like coding boot camps were supposed to be some of like a valid method for education, or at least that's what they want to advertise like coding boot camps as. And so it was supposed to be on par with getting like a degree, but I mean, it obviously isn't, but that's what they tried. And so I felt like I had equal chances to get myself at a decent company as much as these other people that I've seen have. And that just wasn't the case. So, and then you see like some other people who do outside of like the software development or the software industry. You have people who went into marketing and they found jobs pretty quickly too. But I know some people who are also like struggling to find their first job or their first full-time job. So it's actually hard to say if all industries are easy to get into as others. I'm sure there's more demand for different kinds of positions, and yeah, I would say if you're if you're like in the arts industry, then you're probably going to have like I don't even know, you might have some challenges along with getting in, but the experience for getting in is going to be much different than how a software developer, like I guess any other industry, goes. The market is hard, man. It really depends on what time you're trying to get into it. Say if I was born 20 years ago and I still went on the same path, right? Would I have an easier time getting into the software industry? Because it was fairly new. And I feel like a lot of people were just willing to get by with whatever kinds of software guys that they can get a hold of, because those people were rare. And now it's like a very hot topic, and it has all these practices, and it's developed as an industry since its creation. So I don't know, it's just really hard to say. All right, I'll move on. Can you influence the market or drastically change it? So part of what I actually wanted to say here was, well, I guess the idea that I had as I was writing this was, if you went the entrepreneurial route, how much success would you have with changing the market? Or that's kind of how I see like entrepreneurs, as like changing the market. There's like some gap within the market currently, and the way that they fill it is by doing their perceived solution. And sometimes the market says your solution sucks, to the point where nobody is willing to give it a try, or some people blow up, like Amazon, Google, Apple, in order to scale your product up to be more accessible around the world. So how do you get yourself to make your mark in the market? By drastically changing it through like a created service that you have. Because that opportunity doesn't actually happen to everyone. I mean, think about all the companies that have been out there. And I only name like the top 3. There's definitely more companies that, have been seeing success in the way that they measure success. But if you want to be like one of those big tech companies, you have to be like 3 and I don't even know how many billion companies that ever existed in the world. It's a very small margin. So it's hard to, like, even though we all want to make a big improvement to the world, and we may have great ideas, the market is really what decides whether or not you're allowed to scale up. Because it all depends on how, it really all depends on how the market perceives your product. Like, so many things need to go right. And time is like a huge variable in that too. But yes, if you're one of the very lucky ones, you can influence the market and drastically change it. My next bullet point is, can you be picky about this relationship in which company you work for? So in terms of finding like a good method for outletting responsibility in the world, or taking on responsibility in the world, you can be picky about which responsibilities that you want to take up. And of course you'll be well, not of course, but the idea would be is that you'd be compensated for it, both by financially, and the experience itself should be rewarding for you. So I think you should pursue any sort of career or occupation that maximizes both of those in the way that is the most meaningful to you. However, starting out seems kind of like it's a hard place to be when you're starting out. So in terms of my early 20s, which I still am in my early 20s, but it's like, while I'm looking for my first job, there's no way I'm going to be able to be picky about who accepts me and who doesn't. It's hard enough to get myself in the position in the first place. Like I can't choose, I can't afford to be picky about where I put myself or who I allow to spend my time with, because I just need to find my place to begin with. And so anyone who's willing to give me a place is going to be the starting point. So I think it'd be hard very early on to be choosy about where you want to go. That's my thought on that. Should you be guaranteed a spot in the market? This is a very difficult question because this goes into whether or not you should have I'm going to rephrase that. Here's the current point that I'm considering. And maybe you guys could have this conversation amongst yourselves, but should there be a job for everyone? And are you owed a spot? Should the market revolve around making sure that you have a place in it? Because the way that the market is that it's currently changing based on what society needs or what society wants and needs, or like whatever is marketable to the actual society. So as an individual, are you supposed to find your place in there? You're expected to find your place because in order to be a consumer, you have to be a provider of some sort. So you need to actually have an income in order to survive in like a place with house or with like shelter or like basic needs conditions. So does that mean that the market should also have a spot for you? There's a lot to consider there, and I'm sure there's plenty of perspectives out there who who would want to contribute to that statement. I thought it was a good question, but maybe not. I mean, by nature of the market itself, the answer to that is no. But that doesn't mean that we can change the market so that we can work towards that goal if we think it's worthwhile. I'm gonna leave it an open-ended question. That's the first time I've ever tried that, but I don't actually have an answer myself to that. In the full complexity of what the question asks. All right, the difference between making a position and taking a position. So you can, like existing companies will have positions open because they need jobs that specifically take care of a task that they need done, and the idea is that you'd be compensated for it in the various ways that they have to showcase that deal. But there's that option, or it's the option of you can make a position yourself. And if you take a look at the market and you see this gap and be like, I can inform myself to fill in this gap so that I can be the solution to better efficiency to fill myself in the market. Yeah, you could do that too. I mean, that's creatively demanding, and if people are willing to do it, then they can do it. But that way, when you're making the position, you make the rules of how the market sees that solution, or how the market fills the gap with the solution for that problem. And I think that's, as I said, I think that's great for people who are creative enough to come up with solutions that work. But I think most people are only able to be taking a position instead. I mean, that's not even to say that, I mean, I'm missing out on the complete aspect of making a position isn't even sometimes recognized as a solution to a problem that nobody even sees as a problem. So therefore, that makes it a huge financial investment if nobody sees your solution as a problem. To well, yeah, you'll never get compensated if nobody sees the value of your work. So it's a very risky field to be in, or like a risky situation to pursue. But people have made it happen. So what does it take to make a position? Well, I guess I already just talked about that. What does it take to fill a position? I mean, the market already has like defining openings that they see as a current problem that needs a solution for. And if you're willing to take up that already structured role, then I think it's up to you to take it. How do you make your mark? So I think this comes back to like the responsibility portion. If you see yourself holding certain responsibilities, then it'll be meaningful to you. Like anything you see as like worthwhile responsibilities, it will be meaningful to you. And I think that's how you make your mark. Do something where you can see the impact, regardless if others can't. And I think you'll be happy with that. Is there a job for everyone? I think there is a job for everyone. And it's unfortunate that the market might not have it. But I think everyone would have a job. And sometimes you need to create it. But if you're not creatively intelligent, then it's hard. And that kind of sucks. But I don't know. That'll be a situation that needs to be actually thought out. All right, I'm gonna drink a little bit, and then I'll get into some personal segments. I actually really like that last topic, finding your spot. I'm tripping over my words. Woo, that's a rip. Anyways, so in this personal segment, I wrote out a couple bullet points as per usual. Is the industry actually, before I say anything about the bullet points, I think I initially wrote this segment as like open-ended questions for like anybody who was participating with me today. So that's why it's like third person-ish personal segments. It would be for each of us, because like all of us, all the speakers are like kind of looking for their job in the career that they want. So that's why I kind of chose this topic today, because it's important to all of us. And that's not to say that they could do like if they wanted to do this again, they totally could, and we could just hear their perspectives on it. I wouldn't mind doing that, because like their perspectives are equally important to hear, especially to me. But I think there'd be like a lot of insight if other people wanted to hear that. Is the industry you're trying to get into meeting your expectations? I already have a grammar problem with that sentence, but I tried to try to fix it, but maybe not. So in terms of like the industry itself, there's back when I was searching for a job, there'd be like a bunch of recruiting agency. Well, there's both third-party recruiting agencies, and then there's like in-house, in-company recruiting teams who reach out to you. And my experience with those have been terrible, because usually they don't do much in general, and they just like spam emails at you because that's their job, right? So they need to get outreach as much as possible so that they can have the highest chance of, they need the highest amount of volume in order to get volume back. And so I hate that. Like, it's like, if I need a stranger reaching out to me, it should be personal. Like, why would I want to work for a company that just treats me like I'm just, I'm just spam? So, but that's how the industry is. And I don't know if that's consistent with like other types of roles out there. I think it is, because I still also get like spam emails for office assistant jobs back when I was one. So, not a huge fan of that, of like the whole outreach recruiter system. I even wrote like a pretty resentful post on it on LinkedIn. And I don't think anyone liked that, so I deleted it. But I guess the recap of it was, I think it's disgusting that people are getting paid to just spam people with emails. That was really the whole sentiment. And to this day, I still believe that, but I'll be private about it. And maybe not so private anymore, because I just shared that right now. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that part. I don't really have resentment towards anyone else in the industry, though. Yeah. How is finding a job in your early 20s coming out of secondary education? I can't remember if secondary education is college. I think primary, I mean, it would make sense to me that primary is, your K through 12 education, but who knows, man. Um, it's hard because nobody's willing to give you a chance just because you're young. Or people have less reason to give you a chance because you're young. That's probably the better way to put it. And so you need to prove to people that you're worth it by being creative in ways to show that you're a good investment, or that you'd be a great investment for a company. And that's why I think you get a lot of people say that it's about your network. Like, you need to make impressions on your network to get into the industry that you want. And I completely agree with that. Because your network will know your worth if you give them the good impressions to say that you are. If you have the potential there, and fast growing potential, then they're willing to give you a chance. I mean, how is any recruiter going to look at a resume and be like, "Oh yeah, this guy's good." They have like all these technologies to screen for specific keywords throughout your resume. It's like it's a whole bunch of bullshit, automated bullshit. And let's be real, it feels bad knowing that you have to write in a bunch of white letters on a white page these extra keywords just so you can hit some threshold of keywords hit in a resume. Like, that's fucking stupid. Enough about that, though. I'm getting too riled. All right. What problems are there with finding your place? Especially with the tech industry, it's pretty hard. I mean, I could tell you with confidence that if I just went to a pretty dumbed down desk job, I'd be fine. Like, if I had an office assistant, or like if I had to do manual input for a bunch of other things, interfacing with customers, whatever, I could find plenty of jobs doing that. Because people don't want to do that. But finding your place in a creative market with high demand for brilliance in software development, that's, I don't know, the standard is pretty high, so it's hard to get in. So it's been hard finding my place because the industry or the market has just been telling me no. But as is being a early 20s who doesn't like to socialize a whole lot, I'll get more into that later, because that's not actually entirely true. How often have you changed career paths? So for me, I haven't changed anything at all. I mean, I've thought about being a teacher. I've thought about being a psychologist, well, not so much psychiatry, but a psychologist for sure. I'd like to think that I can understand people pretty well. And so, and I feel like I have a decent way with words most of the time. And I can pick up on ways that people are feeling and understand people to a pretty great depth. So, I've played around with that idea, but I've actually stuck with software development this whole time. I know for some other speakers there might have been some shifts, but for me that's not entirely the case. Or for me that's not the case at all. All right. So the next segments are or the next questions are about like job searching specific stuff. So there's like job searching websites. There's like Monster, Indeed, Glassdoor, LinkedIn to some degree. I'm probably missing like a bunch of others, ZipRecruiter. So there's all these websites where it just like has you fill in a form and then you have to wait and see if you're picked. I would say for most of them, they're pretty bad, especially because like a company could just have you fill or like a company could just have on the website you fill in your resume and you like your first name, last name, email, whatever, and that's it. Or they could redirect you to the company website and have you fill out like some very personalized form there where you have to fill pretty much everything that's in your resume back on their form while submitting your resume on top of that. So there's like the extra manual work of filling out pretty much what's already in your resume anyways back into their system. And on top of that, you also get like a bunch of spam emails from the from the company that you just submitted your email to. So it's like it's a huge time-consuming manual process for some of them, and that's why like it's such a terrible, terrible method to do. Unless if you're like overly competent for the job, you're not going to get picked for like any of those positions. So yeah, websites suck. That's all I'm going to say. It's like companies don't know how to do them well yet. Unless if it's like one of the big ones where they have pretty much everything on their own website. So that way, like if you ever need to go back to like any of the big companies and what kind of job offerings that they have, you have all your information stored there and you can just transfer it. Amazon's great about that. But then again, Amazon has a lot of jobs, so it's like I'm picking a specific amount or like a very biased amount for like big tech companies. Or I'm biased towards big tech companies for that reason. Interacting with recruiters. So what I have tried in the past is I've actually reached out to one of Twitch's recruiters. Huge fan of Twitch. Might work there someday. Not really sure anymore. I'd like to. I think they're a great company still. I just had a lot more passion in the past when they had better consumer-facing solutions. Yeah. But I reached out to one of them, and I don't know. It was nice to have that personal, like, one-on-one. But I didn't have anyone talk to me afterward. Like, it was still pretty distant in terms of nobody was willing to do anything for me, even though we developed some sort of artificial relationship. And it is what it is, right? It's like people will invest in you as much as like they want to. So no matter how much you reach out to recruiters independently, it's not like it's still a miracle to get it to the next step where they're so passionate about you that they'll put in a good word for you or throw your resume up towards the top. So there's still a process that needs to be happening there. And you're not developing the full sorts of passion that you'd want to have your recruiter to have about you. So personally, reaching out to people at companies. So I think this is a little different from like specifically talking with recruiters. Like you can talk with, I don't know, like software developers at like a specific company. I honestly haven't gone that route. I know other people have, and I don't think it's really gotten them very far. I think that's a very rare case where you can reach out to like software developers at a specific company and just hit it off. I mean, hitting it off with anyone is pretty hard to begin with. So it really does take a miracle to have that happen with anyone at a company. I've also tried walk-ins. So I just like walked in on a company and was like, "Hey, I'm looking for a job," and I was like in fucking shorts and just like a plain T-shirt. It was pretty bad. So I just walked in, gave them my resume, and then left. And nobody was passionate about it, and it just ended in nobody speaking with me. I mean, obviously, right? Like no one wants to deal with that, unless if you have like some impressionable appearance or impressionable aura around you. Yeah, I don't even know. Walk-ins aren't that great. I'll just say that. There's also networking events. So what I wanted to say earlier is that I'm pretty good at networking events in general because I could put on like the mask for a little bit and then I can just move forward from there. It's not that bad. So with the yeah, as a more social guy, for I can be temporarily social. And maybe it's getting better as I speak, but um, yeah, these networking events usually require you to start a conversation with people, or you have to be confident enough to budge your way in on like a certain circle that's already been developed, and you can just hit it off from there. Um, and usually, networking events are better than like job. Oh God, what are those called? Job fairs. Yeah, job fairs. You're like there for a very specific reason, and it feels pretty bad knowing that knowing that you're there to talk to recruiters in particular, and they know for certain that you're there to talk with them about any job openings that they have. So that dynamic in general is already pretty bad, um, in the sense that there's like some expectation of that sort of relationship that's happening or that's being developed there. That's why I think networking events are generally better. The reason, okay, what I will say is I did go to an Amazon job fair in Seattle, and we were standing out in line for. I was standing out in line for maybe like 4 hours, and there was some. I mean, it was a job fair, right? So you'd have like recruiters all like across the venue, and some even went out like on the street to wait in line with some of us or just like interact with some of us, and that was phenomenal. The best connection that I made there was the one who was walking up and down the street as I was standing in line. Like, no joke, this person and I just hit it off because we have the same level of sarcasm or like the same humor. And it, like, I was there for 4 hours. She was there to check up on me like every once in a while. And so we had a really great time, just hitting it off. It was great. And then after the event, and I went back home, like I reached back out to the recruiter she was a recruiter, but not in the particular field I was in. She went back with my resume and like actually did something about trying to get me a job there. And that's the kind of connections that you need. Like, it's just, don't make it about like finding a job, make it about finding really cool people in the industry or in whatever industry. I think you'll see more success through that than you will with trying to be job oriented all the time. Cool. Um, Yeah, I'm all right with that. So the next one up is resumes. And I guess I've already talked about like resumes in general. Most of the time you just submit it to someone and you just hope that they're going to do something about it. You just hope that like your story all on one page is going to be convincing enough that you are going to be promising to hire, or that you have enough potential to hire. And that's why I think resumes are they're necessary for like that short snippet of you, but for the most part they don't really do much anymore. I truly believe that the connections that you make get you where you want to be. And so do what's the most meaningful to you. I think you could make any of these avenues, or like any of these different, um, any of these like advice points of reaching out to specific people, or, um, I don't know, you could probably make a walk-in work if you're really good at those, but for me, it's always been about the networking side of things and making connections. And that's what gets you where you want to go. Or at least that gives you more opportunities, a greater opportunity than I've ever had with any of the other methods. And the last one is, what's the best method for finding a job? Exactly what I just said. I think you just got to get over yourself and get over the idea that you're there for a job. I mean, of course you are, but the experience of meeting someone new is going to yield better results than you keeping in mind that you need to press for a job opportunity at the very least. I think you should be happy if a job opportunity comes, but I think your main role at a networking event is to actually build the connection. Because nobody else, if you never build the connection, then nobody in your network is going to be thinking that you're impressionable enough to be worth the benefit of the doubt that you have potential that's worth hiring. I like that. I think honestly, that's all I had for today. Um, yeah, I actually kind of liked how this segment went. I think I still used a bunch of filler words through most of my sentences, but I think there were points that I hit that I really wanted to hit well, and I think I did. So, delivery wise, I'm pretty happy with myself. Anyhow, as I said, I did complete the whole like outline from that. A little over an hour, not bad. A couple things that I did want to get off my chest because I know I've talked about these in the past, so I'll just finish this segment with some like personal stuff. First thing is, I've developed this goal of wanting to do like a short animation piece. I don't know if I want to be the one drawing it, but I have a story that I want to share. And I think it'll be related to my depression story and how I saw and how I see that internal struggle. And I think my recent passion for anime allowed me the creative mind to come up with a solution to showcase that story. So I was thinking of having like an anime based like story, um, maybe just like a one episode thing, or maybe even like a 2 or 3 minute thing, like a super short episode of the internal struggles of depression and the way that I see it. I think it'd be beautiful, but in the way that I can creatively imagine it, but it's going to be very demanding for resources, which I don't have any clue as to how I'm going to fill that, but is what it is. In terms of like the actual suicide attempt and depression story that I've been talking about it for a long time. It's not that I haven't had any passion for it. I've had no resources or no motivation to do it right now. it's still something I want to do, but there's a bunch of other things that I still need to do as well. Um, internship's going pretty good. I would say this is the first week where I've actually felt like I've contributed something. And I have a plan to contribute something big by the end of either this week or next week. So I'm going to have like a microservice come out that does a lot of automation for a small product for T-Mobile. So I'm going to be very proud when that comes out. And I think I have a good solution for how to go about that. I just need to put in the time and effort to implement it. In terms of other podcast stuff, there's like a widget that I'd probably want to have that like someone brought up the idea that it kind of sucks only having this background image for the podcast material. I think what I would want to do is probably have like a voice audio thing or like voice volume thing like Discord has sometimes. But there's also volume levels that OBS has. So I think I might be able to take the OBS levels of my microphone and then associate that with like a picture of mine, just to indicate that I'm the one talking. And if like any other speakers come on, I would also have like a widget for them too. The only problem with that is that to do desktop levels on OBS, it would just be all three of them combined because there's no way to differentiate the three, or like the maximum amount of three different speakers. So if there was only one other speaker, that would work well, pairing that with the desktop audio from OBS. But anyways, that's just another idea that I needed to write down. But yeah, I think that about does it from me. I will be looking forward to, well, okay, if anyone has like any insight on any of these, I'd be very happy to hear it because I still need to develop my own perspective of how these all work. I'm still orienting that information for myself and the kinds of experiences that I've had. And I think having other people's experiences here would make this, or make my own perspective complete. But yeah, I think that about does it from me. I will see you guys next week. We might be doing Alon's music thing. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Bye-bye.